Well, welcome to this episode of the Product Biz Podcast. I'm so excited today to have a very special guest. Dylan Jarhaus is with us, and she is an Etsy expert. She grew her Etsy shop to $1 million in sales in just 5 years. So we are going to pick her brain, get her insights, and learn more from her because she has so much awesome information to share. So welcome, Dylan. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Monica. I've been looking forward to this for so long. It's so great to talk to someone else who's an Etsy expert because there's a lot happening with Etsy now, and
Yeah.
I think a lot to be talked about. Yeah.
Love it. And it's going to be so good to get your insights and tips so people have exactly what to do next or how to think about Etsy, how to look at Etsy. It's going to be awesome. So tell us first a little bit about you. Like, how did you get started in Etsy? What's your story? What's your background? And what brought you to what you do today?
Yeah. So my background, I grew up in the Midwest on a farm, horse farm, and people are like, "You were a farm girl?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I was." And went to college on the East Coast, studied business. Then I went to London, studied buying and product development. I thought I wanted to get into fashion journalism. After a kind of disastrous Marie Claire internship in New York, realized fashion journalism is not what I thought. Have you seen The Devil Wears Prada?
Yes.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that what
that.
it's like? No way, really?
Yeah, I thought it was a joke, but it's real. So switched into the business side and really the commerce side. I went and worked for Zappos in Las Vegas, doing buying and product development there, and then went up to Zulily, which went through closure and everything, reopening soon it looks like, but that was a very different business model. Learned a lot, but I also met someone there who I married, my husband. I was a blogger at the time too, and he found my blog. He blindly invited me to a military ball and got married about almost a year later and moved to San Diego. And they really don't have good corporate e-commerce here. So I was side hustling. I was dog walking. I was house sitting. I felt like such a failure. I was about 25, 26. And I thought my career had peaked. I was just trying to find some way to get traction with something new and interviewing for corporate jobs at the time, getting all these rejections. And I was devastated because my self-worth, whether this is good or bad, a lot of it's through achievement for me, which is not a good place to be, especially when you're in between jobs. And started an Etsy shop, just blindly threw up something that I made for our wedding. I forgot about it. 2 months later, it sold. I'm like, oh my gosh, now it was a handmade item. Now I have to make this thing. Like,
Yep.
I don't know how I'm going to ship this because it was made out of foam and toothpicks from the dollar store. Like, not at all shippable. So my husband and I figured out how to make it. Started getting some traction, added one other product to the shop, and then by month 4, we're at about 10K months.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how Etsy started, expanded onto Amazon and Shopify. 7 years later, started teaching it. Yeah.
That is awesome. Like hearing by month 4 you were at 10K months, that's fabulous. That's like a quick turnaround. So what were the products you were selling and what do you think led to having that awesome success so quickly?
Yeah, so the first sale, I just had one listing up. It was 2 months in. So between month 2 and month 4, going from one sale to 10K per month. Now my average order value is pretty high, kind of up there close to $100 per item. But it would really, I would say, be taking everything from corporate e-commerce and applying it to this. For some reason, I was treating Etsy just like eBay, like I was selling something, like a garage sale online. That's how I was treating it. I'm like, wow, Dylan, like you used to do this for work. Like, why didn't you just apply those principles? And it was in the wedding niche, kind of wedding arena. It was a letter, an initial for our last name, and covered in flowers. And then added one other product that was actually kind of nursery decor. And then that was kind of what I became known for, wedding and baby.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So when you say you grew your Etsy shop to $1 million in sales, was it primarily in the wedding and baby category, or did you end up expanding to other types of items that were part of that too?
Yeah, it always has been primarily wedding and baby, and then I added in events. So events and occasions like birthdays and showers and things like that. So basically situations where people are definitely spending money, you know?
Mhm. I love that. That's a really good place to be on Etsy because wedding and birthday parties and kids' birthdays and baby showers or whatever it is, they want to make it an experience. They're like, okay, I will get what I want if it fits the vibe and the theme and what I'm going for, no matter what the cost is. I love that. So, other question, when you were reaching this 1 million threshold and your sales were coming in, were you hand making everything yourself? Did you grow and have a team? Is that still operating today? And what does that look like?
Yes. So basically, it was just me because we move a lot for the military, and I mean, it quickly went from like 1 million to 1.7 when I got the team. So when I outsourced, because doing it by yourself, I had two babies, like it's a lot, and my husband was gone, and it was a lot of physical work, and then ended up starting to outsource to another military spouse, just part-time, like packaging, right? Kind of easing off of the control. And then it was actually impacting my health. Because when I work, I was standing on my legs so much where I had to get surgery,
Oh my
I had
goodness.
vascular disease in my legs. So, when something impacts your health, like even, your story, it can be a wake up call, like, okay, something's got to change. So I started fully outsourcing production, and that's exactly when I started teaching. So, fully outsourcing production, meaning all I do is print shipping labels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's great. So we're at a bit of a transition. My full-time employee is actually moving. Uh, so, we're kind of at a transition point. We're making decisions, but yeah, it's great to not have to do it yourself. you know.
Yeah, I love that. Love hearing how your business took off and how it grew and how you got support. That's fabulous because I think that's the name of the game of how do we create a business that's bringing in money and also that you're not doing all the work all the time, that you have time to like start a second business or spend more time with your kids or spend more time with your spouse. So I love hearing that. I think that's awesome and so inspirational for people who are listening. So now that you teach Etsy and you have all this awesome experience, let me ask you some questions on those who are either getting started on Etsy or on Etsy and hear what you got to say. So
Yeah.
let's start with some basics. How to decide what to sell on Etsy? Like, what's your strategy here, and how do you recommend for people to know what to even sell?
Yeah. So a lot of people I work with, they come with a financial goal of, it's kind of like, I don't care what I sell, but I want to make 5 to 10,000 a month. Um, some of our students are definitely like coming in with, very passionate about their products, and there's some, more of an emotional tie to it. But a lot of people who are just starting and without a product mix already, they are focused on making a certain amount so they can quit their jobs. And when they come in that, way, I recommend not trying to choose a product, because then you come up with, like, you're trying to force yourself to come up with this winning product idea, and then you're hoping someone wants it. Instead, I actually recommend choosing, who do I want to rely on for my income? What type of customers are these? Who has expensive hobbies or activities where they're spending a lot of money and time investing in these things already? Because that's proof of concept. They will spend money on that area of their life. So I recommend starting there and then building your product mix around that person. It also takes the pressure off, because when people come in trying to come up with this winning product, it rarely lands the first time.
I love that. And what are some examples of some of your students, like they come with this financial goal? What are some awesome or unique or cool items that you've seen them create from going through this exercise that you just mentioned?
Yes. So one of my students, she actually, it was, oh man, it was about a year and a half ago, roughly. And she was in New York. She was an attorney making a lot of money. And she really was burned out, though. And she was, really burned out, needed to make a change, couldn't keep doing that. So starting a shop, and she actually looked at, okay, expensive hobbies and activities. Hockey is expensive, like all the equipment and gear. So her shop started by targeting hockey parents. And with that, it scaled very, very rapidly this last Q4. And she just made a ton of money, and she expanded beyond just hockey, but expensive sports, basically.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, so cool. So what are some of her products that correlate to expensive sports? Is it like memorabilia or what does that mean?
Yeah. So, for example, people who are have kids in hockey, like they're doing all these tournaments and things. So, I guess I'm not a hockey girl, but like the pucks, it's kind of like a display, like displays for pucks,
Mm,
or um, got into pickleball, like carrying cases for the gear. So it's very high utility items. A
yeah.
lot of yeah for kids. I mean, really, the parents are buying them for the kids primarily. It seems. Yeah.
Super cool. Now, with something like that, do you have them do any research on Etsy to see is it selling or because I totally get what you're saying of who is an audience that will buy items that they need, but how do you also make sure that that is to confirm what you're thinking people are purchasing? Is there anything in between that you recommend people to do?
Yes, yes. So I think a lot of people, when they're trying to decide what to sell on Etsy, they just go to Etsy and find best sellers, and then they're like, I could do that, and they kind of copy, and it's like a cheaper kind of knockoff. So what we recommend for people is actually not looking at Etsy to find the ideas and looking outside of Etsy. I've really found, Etsy to be one of the last places to pick up on trends. So I find if you're chasing something that's already on Etsy, you're around 6 to 8 months behind. So instead, we look to places like Pinterest. One of my students gets fantastic ideas from TikTok DIY videos. Those are a couple places, influencers, premium brands, people who are setting trends, right? That's kind of where we look to for ideas and trends and aesthetics. And then for verifying your ideas, because you want to make sure someone's going to buy it, right? We do look specifically on Etsy. And a lot of people are in the practice of going to like E-rank and then, oh, it's, low competition, high search volume. But we're building software right now. So we've learned a lot about kind of the data that Etsy provides. And a lot of that data is not from Etsy.
Mm,
So it's from third-party providers in Google. So we recommend going to Etsy, really looking for qualitative data. So typing in those long tail keywords and seeing what comes up in search results. And the question is, can I compete? Are there proven bestsellers, popular now, Etsy's picks, and can I compete? Could I, things with a bestseller with a bad image? That's my favorite because wow, we could come in and take some market share.
mm. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. That's such a good tip. And it's so true. Absolutely. That last bit that you said, like find your bestsellers and then it's selling where the listing is like, this is a little rough around the edges. I can totally elevate and make this better. But I love what you said because a lot of my members are people who do have businesses from passions, but sometimes they're thinking through to add new products. And I think what you just said is a great way for anyone who's thinking of adding new products instead of just like, oh, I want to make this, or oh, I think this will be good. Do some research on like Pinterest or influencers, Instagram, what's trending, what's gonna blow up, what's gonna lead to more sales, and then back that up to see is it on Etsy? Is it also selling? I think that's super, super interesting because one of my good sellers on Etsy was a gua sha facial stone massage tool. And those were super trendy a couple years ago. And it was beautiful because then I could upsell it with a facial serum, or people would view that product, go to my shop, and then add some more skincare. So that wasn't an item that I like made. However, it was a trend and it got me so much traction and then led to more sales of my other products. So I think that's genius what you're saying. Like, find ways to get in on what's trending or about to be trending and see how it fits in your product suite and how it fits in your business. I think that's genius.
Yeah, I do think there's, two ways to go with growing on Etsy. One is chasing what's on Etsy. And the problem with that is you're always chasing. You're always looking at, you're following shops, you're seeing what new listings they post, and then you're like trying to copy or, use as inspiration as quickly as possible to ride on their coattails. And the other way is I believe it's, a faster way to become a market leader. And it's by bringing new things to Etsy that, and being the first and becoming the best seller. So really, you're not just chasing down winners, you're being the winner and other people will chase you down, which, it's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Okay. Next question. What does it take to succeed on Etsy in 2024?
Yeah. So I do think it takes more strategy now than it did 5 years ago, especially in like 2020, right? Everyone's home, the stimulus checks are flying, and it wasn't that difficult to make money. Like you see a lot of shops that blew up specifically in 2020. And now, like the strategies that they used then, they don't work the same now. So, I think it's really about constantly iterating your business. And do you know Alex and Layla Hermosi?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see them on Instagram all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Alex and Layla, they were mentors of mine last year with this business. And Layla talks about in one of her videos, like Coke and Pepsi, right? They're like soda software brands, and they are constantly coming out with limited edition flavors, and they're constantly infusing new. And it's limited edition, but they're not going to just rest on their core products. And I think in 2024, relying on what worked for you in 2020, you're going to be, if you're not growing, you're going to be shrinking. Like you've got to keep infusing new. And I think people forget to do it because they get comfortable. So that's kind of my encouragement this year, to really focus on new.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome, awesome feedback. Cool. Now, as people are taking your feedback of like what to sell, how to succeed, how do people actually stand out on Etsy?
Yeah. So I think there's a few ways that I've found for standing out. And one is, bringing in things that are new and different and new trends. Special makeups are a fantastic way to do that. So if you are, let's say, in the supply category, or you have a production partner, having special makeups, which is like a new color, new material that your competition doesn't have access to, that can be a really great way to stand out. And for my sellers who, like one of my students, she went from 250 sales to 25,000 sales in a year.
Wow.
And yeah, and she had no background in this. She was working for Tesla, and she had a couple like print on demand things in her shop. And she's, since expanded. She does print on demand, handmade supplies, and digital in one shop. And we recently worked, she's going on another 18 months of coaching with us. And we've been working with her on the special makeups, which is working with manufacturers on new lines that are exclusive to you. So it's been a huge way for her to grow. And I think she went from 25,000 to 28,000 or 29,000, just even so much more rapidly because of things like that.
Beautiful. So I see a lot of what you're saying is really finding something that's kind of never been done before, either different variations or different products or something new that's on trend. It seems like that's a big thing for people to really stand out, right? Is really finding in and honing in on what can you do that's different. Is that right?
Yeah, making something about what you offer different. And we focus on, how to win in search results. It's your value proposition. So it's that combination of your photo and your price. That's all people see. That's all they're really comparing. They're not looking at, the long title. They're not like hovering over to read your title. They're not able to see the description. Oftentimes they don't even see the video because they don't realize if they just left their mouse alone, it would show a video. So the photo and the price is so important. And that's where you have to show how you are different. Do you offer free shipping? Is it a 24-hour turnaround? Do you have, 10 different sizes? Do you have bulk discounts? There's so many ways for you to be different with a very similar product, but you don't ever want to go head to head where it's just price.
Yeah, I love that. Now, on the titles and tags part, how do you teach that? Like, what do you recommend for people? Is it still as important as it's always been? And how do people really use titles and tags to help them get found?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So SEO, there's so much about this. I mean, so many videos, and I think you'll probably hear probably 20 to 30 different opinions if you really like watch all these videos. I found SEO is incredibly important, and we're actually in the process of we've already built and we're launching a software for SEO. So maybe by the time this comes out, it'll be like out in the open. We'll see. But SEO is so important, and it will make or break a shop. You can have a perfect product, perfect pictures, but if your SEO is missing, like you're never going to get found. So I find like I had a student come in, she had no sales for a year and a half in her shop, no sales. All she did was update the SEO, and within a month, she was having $300 days. Like same product. Like that's all, that was the one change. I had another student, it was like 2 days before, she said she had a listing, it was no sales and only 5 views in 3 months. She updated the SEO, and within a couple hours, just a couple hours, she had 3 sales and 3 add to carts. And you get that boost. Etsy says it's as short as a few hours when you make updates. But I mean, yeah, I can't overemphasize or what that impact is. So extremely important. It's not just titles and tags. There's so many places you need it. Yeah.
Yeah. And for someone who's listening, what's a quick win that they could implement of either title or tag or SEO in general that can get them on the right track?
Yes. So I think there's a big misconception or maybe a confusion between keyword stuffing and long tail keywords. So we never want to just like pack a bazillion keywords into a title and that's your title, right? You want to have as many long tail keywords as possible. So we do that through a strategy where they overlap with each other. That's what we teach because it allows you to have more sets of those long tail keywords. So no keyword stuffing, but as many unique sets of long tail keywords as possible and really evaluate, are you competing with yourself? I see people come in, they think they have perfect SEO and they have the same exact SEO on every listing. I'm thinking, how many different search results could you possibly come up under? There's about 5. And, you know, it's really hard to win that way. So variety of long tail keywords is the most important thing.
I love it. And when you say long tail, that means for someone who may not know, like keywords that aren't as popular but are getting searches. Is that how you would explain long tail keyword?
Yeah, so like several words together. So
Okay.
like three words. So instead of like nursery decor, blush pink girl nursery decor. Yeah,
Cool. Love
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Awesome. So good. I think that's a great, like, super easy tip that someone can implement and see what happens for them.
yeah.
Anything else that you want to share about Etsy or what you would say to an Etsy seller or any advice you would give maybe to someone who's stuck on Etsy?
Yeah, I would say don't underestimate the power of this platform. There's a lot of people, naysayers saying, it's Etsy's done. It's no longer the place to be. Just start a website. It is still the fastest place to build a brand. And the customers, the traffic that they bring, they are your marketing team. And it is, if you are serious about building a business, I highly still recommend Etsy be your starting point. It's not the end all be all. And I don't think, any of us Etsy coaches say only do Etsy, long term, but it is something that you really have to consider the power of and the customers behind it. If you aren't doing Etsy, and especially if you're a handmade business or a digital business, or you're doing print on demand, if you're not doing Etsy, you're leaving so much money on the table. So it's so worth the time, and it's compared to Shopify or Amazon, especially so low effort. It
Mhm.
really is.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you said that you sell your event, wedding, etc. items on Amazon, right?
So I have a different product line for Amazon specifically,
Mhm.
um, that I have on Etsy and my website, but the website has everything. I segment certain products for Amazon, and then Etsy's everything. Yeah.
Yeah. How does Amazon compare to Etsy for you in terms of just the results you're seeing or even the workload? I heard you say it's more challenging, but what's the difference between Etsy and Amazon for you?
So Amazon, it is a can of worms if you don't have super personalized products, because you're going to have to accept returns if you don't have personalization with a name or a number. So like words, names, or addresses or numbers have to be personalized in order to not off or have to accept returns, which I'm a big proponent of. My price points are higher, so I'm not doing like free returns for custom products. So that's something to consider. Amazon also has really strict regulations around shipping turnaround time, and that is extremely important. You can get dinged for things that aren't even really your fault, but you are accountable as a seller. So you have to remember that. Now, Amazon handmade, that category specifically, I think Amazon still does push that, and there's a need for certain handmade products, like specifically wedding. So if you're in wedding, I would recommend testing Amazon handmade. The infrastructure in the back end is just such a headache because Etsy, like a 10-year-old could probably figure it out.
Yeah.
Amazon, there's people who are, in from a corporate background and they struggle to figure it out. So with Amazon, I do recommend definitely getting guidance if you're going to go that route. Yeah.
I love it. So you're not in FBA, fulfillment, whatever, fulfillment by Amazon or whatever that stands for, because your items are custom, is that correct?
Exactly. So since
Mhm.
everything is custom made to order, I don't have inventory at a warehouse,
Yeah.
which it's great. It's great because you really then can share your inventory with Etsy and you're not worried about um, overstocking or holding costs or anything like that.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna start with Amazon, I recommend starting with personalized products, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a really good idea because the biggest thing with Amazon, and I know we're totally tangenting, but is like the returns. And then you get dinged for the returns and it costs you money and there's such a headache for returns. So I love how you found this way to not even have to deal with that. Like it's personalized, and because it's personalized, no returns versus a more commodity items. And I know as consumers, we've all done it. We've got something from Amazon, didn't like it, isn't what we wanted, found some sort of small defect with it, and we're like, all right, it's so simple to return on Amazon, I'm just gonna return it. So I love how you realize, like, okay, there's got to be a way to not have that happen for my business, to spend the money every single time there's a return and the return shipping and return restocking, whatever fees they charge. I love that. I think that's genius.
Yeah, and a lot of, the core of my business has really been faux florals. So fake flower items and personalization with color, it's not enough. So they would still have to force returns on you, which, you make a $500 thing for someone's nursery and they don't want it. And now you have this customized custom color thing that you can't do anything with. So really, yeah, be careful with Amazon.
Yeah.
And just also, I interviewed someone who did $40 million on Shopify and Amazon in a few years, and she recommended only putting your core products, nothing limited edition on Amazon.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that too, just across the board. Even sometimes for Etsy, if people are really coming out with a lot of new products, sometimes that can be a headache of the listing and the details, etc. And getting started at least with your core bestsellers of like get that in a good spot of the products you know sell. And then you can add in like the more fun pieces as you have time and capacity too. Now, would you say for someone, since we're on the topic of Etsy and Amazon, would you recommend someone like nail down Etsy first? It's a lot easier, it's maybe less expensive, you can get it up and running maybe sooner. Would you recommend for someone to do that first before Amazon, or would you recommend simultaneously or one versus the other?
Yeah. So the order I'd recommend is Etsy first, because you're going to get fast feedback, fast proof of concept, and then Shopify or your website. Really, once you're hitting about 80,000 in revenue, then you'll start to save on some fees. And then Amazon, just because, you know, the fees are much higher on Amazon and it's just such a beast. So really get the other two going first, I would say.
I love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
tell us, Dylan, where people can find out more about you and stay in touch.
Yes. So we do have a podcast. My husband named it. I actually can't quite remember the name. I think it's Etsy Seller Success Secrets or something with Dylan Jarhaus. I have to check with him, see what he did. And then Instagram is the best. It is at Dylan Jarhaus. We are on there. I have a team on there. We are happy to talk to you about your shop and just, take a look at it and see kind of what's going on with it.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes so people can find you and hear more from you. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Monica. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Product Biz podcast.